Njengoba besinethembisile maswathi lamahle ukuthi sinawethulela inkulumo yembuwe emhlaba lethulwe ngumhlonishwa Mvunankhulu Russell Dlamini lo 7 le New York lapho khona kuchubeka umhlangano waka UN noma ke inhlangano yakamhlahlangene maswathi lamahle sesivele siconze kuyo inkulumo yakhe umhlonishwa Mvunankhulu lethule khona ka UN eMelika.
General of the United Nations, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor to address the Summit of the Future on behalf of His Majesty King Mswati III, where the world leaders have gathered to commit to multilateral solutions for a better tomorrow. This summit is an opportunity to take bold actions that will shape the future of our planet and the well-being of generations to come. We commend the co-facilitators of the outcome documents, the Pact for the Future, Global Digital Compact, and Pact on Future Generations for their stellar work. Humanity faces unprecedented global challenges from poverty and inequality to climate change and technological transformation. No single nation can tackle these challenges alone. The Global Pact for the Future calls for a renewed, inclusive, equitable, and responsive multilateral system. Eswatini, along with other African nations, has long called for reforms to the United Nations to create a more inclusive and representative global governance system. The Eswatini consensus remains a cornerstone for this call. The current structure of the Security Council does not reflect modern geopolitical realities, particularly the underrepresentation of Africa. Expanding the Security Council to include permanent representation for Africa and other marginalized regions is essential for maintaining its legitimacy and addressing global security challenges. This reform is critical to building trust in global institutions. Eswatini believes Taiwan must be included in the international system. Taiwan contributes significantly to global public health, economic development, and technological innovation. Excluding Taiwan limits global cooperation when it is most needed. We call for Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations. The COVID-19 pandemic, economic shocks, and the climate crisis have exposed vulnerabilities in the international financial system. Many developing nations face unsustainable debt, limiting their investment in critical areas like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Eswatini calls for comprehensive debt restructuring and reforms to international financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, ensuring that they respond to the needs of developing nations. Fairer access to financing for climate resilience and development is also crucial. Although Eswatini, like other developing countries, contributes little to the climate crisis, it is heavily impacted. While we have made significant improvements in disaster risk governance, urgent climate finance from developed nations is crucial to help mitigate and adapt to these effects. As we work to reduce emissions and meet our commitments, developing nations must continue to prioritize industrialization and energy security to achieve their development goals. Technological advancements create opportunities for development, but have also widened the digital divide. Eswatini recognizes the transformative potential of digital technologies, but urges technologically advanced nations to support affordable technology sharing with developing countries and address risks from emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. We must ensure technology becomes a tool for inclusion, not inequality. This summit presents a unique opportunity to rebuild trust in multilateral system. The crises we face require urgent coordination, international cooperation. In conclusion, the Summit of the Future offers an unparalleled opportunity to reshape the global system. We call reforms through the Eswatini consensus, equitable representation in decision-making forums.
Thank you, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Eswatini.
Maswati lamahle ngiyoke inkulumo yembube emhlaba lethule ngumhlonishwa Ndvunankhulu Russell Dlamini even lemelika enhlokodolobha iNew York lapho khona kuchubeka umhlangano waka UN lapho khona ubuka indzaba mhlawumbe letinyenti letibalekile. Maswati lamahle kanse studio sesina LinkedIn Vikelisizwe Gule sitakhulumisa kabanti yona lendzaba mhlawumbe sitawutsinza tingoni letintsatfu lekucala mhlawumbe lesitayitsinza kule nkulumo yemhlonishwa Ndvunankhulu sitawubuka indzaba yeEzulwini consensus sibuke indzaba yase Taiwan ngoba sivile ukuthi itsinziwe indzaba yeTaiwan njengoba sitawukhumbula ukuthi mhlambe ayisilo lunga la ka UN siphindze mhlambe sibuke indzaba ye climate change egule vukela bikela noma nginawuthi vusela sive semaswati singangeni mhlambe mathunje nale nkulumo yethu
zodwa sivusele emaswatini namhla kusihlwa
gule mhlambe unangasichazela ngokuthi kwentekani mhlambe ngale Ezulwini consensus
zodwa utakhumbula ukuthi na I think 8 decades ago San Francisco nabacala mhlabhlangene kwaba khona lo ukuthi kube ne-UN Security Council. I-UN Security Council nawufunza I think it's article 25 nangasi mistaken waka UN lochaza ukuthi kuyawuba ne-UN Security Council yawuba nemalunga lalishumi nesihlanu bese kusekutaba nema-member lasihlanu lekuthiwa ngema permanent member states adabana nalo kuthiwa yi-veto power ngichaza ke lokho bese sekuba na 10 walamalunga lekuthiwa ngema non-permanent member states kunelive leMelika kuneRussia kuneChina kuneFrance kune-United Kingdom la ngema permanent member states noma ke members ale United Security Council iyafika ke i-African Union la ezulwini ngeminyaka wa 2005 ifike iAfrica ikhuluma ngavilinye ithi sesifikile isikhathi ukuthi kwentiwe ama reforms kule UN Security Council. Ithi Africa ifuna kuba na 2 permanent seats bese ke sekuba na 10 non-permanent seats. Ithi ke akulungiswe le UN ifuna kuba nelivi etindzabeni letendekako emhlabeni Africa ngoba kungimanje ide live kanti nawo uyayibuka geographically iAfrica iAfrican Union is got I think around 193 members lamani ngakhona chamuka eAfrica ithi ke Africa akulungiswe lokho so sinqumo lesithathathwa eveni la kangwane kwase singamarch iAfrican Union nakuhlanganele executive council yafike vele yasibusisa lesinqumo leso ngileleke Ndvunankhulu nanamuhla ngithunywa ingosi bahamba tikwaso I think President William Ruto President Cyril Ramaphosa bagcile kuso nanamuhla kuthenini ay reform le UN Security Council kuthi Africa ayibe na 2 ma permanent seats njengoba kwendeka kulabo sondozima I think basically ngiloko lekusho iAfrica kuthenini tonke ama-decision lathathwa kwamhlabhlangene iAfrica mhlambe ayingabukeli kepha ke nayo ayibe nelivi sinqumo lesithathwa la eSwatini
mhlambe kuleli indzaba layitsinzile umhlonishwa Ndvunankhulu indzaba yelive leTaiwan njengoba sathi ukuthi ide sihlalo mhlambe ka UN kanti utsinzile nekokuthi siyathi ukuthi Taiwan mhlambe nasikhulumisa indzaba tetempilo bahamba embile endzabeni tetempilo mhlambe ungangena kule kafishane
ngangena zodwa ngekuthatha emavili akhunywe ngupresident waseSerbia elangeni lamuhla la achaze khona labe beka abuse labe beka sola khona lamavila lesitawu simavila amakhulu emhlabeni ukuthi ayabonakala kwangazuthi afuna ukuprotecta umthetho wamhlabhlangene kanti ayawu abuse njani ke isovereignty yemave ngonyama emhlaba onke malanga naye ka UN iyamemetela lo ukuthi iTaiwan ay recognize njenge level elitimele ubuka le level elikhumbula ukuthi nga 2022 nakwendiwa i-census bebana 23.9 million people nawubuka ne technical industrialization nangabekisa kanjalo zodwa ngelinye lemaveleli kulo 20th century kubena nakuthiwa bathi iTaiwan miracle in terms of industrialization le leveleli ngelinye lemavela athuthuka kakhulu emhlabeni umhlaba ubhekene neCovid some of the solutions aqhamuke khona even lase Taiwan even China yona mainland China letinye into letidzingako ukuze usinayo khona ukusurvive ithatha khona le Taiwan ngonyama emhlaba ke simhlahlangene akayirecognize iTaiwan njengelive lelimele letawukhona kuparticipate kule mihlangano lelichungechunge nje lemihlangano yaka UN lechubekako itawuletha lama solutions la khona you talk about AI manje probably Taiwan is ama solutions ukuthi kungabe kwenziwa kanjani kusemhlabeni wonke jikelele bonke abantu bakhonye kufinyelela kuthi kuxhumana
kule mhlambe sitsenze tingo letintathu kanti yesuthi kakhulu lenkulumo yemhlonishwa ndinankulu mhlambe le indzaba lesingake singene kiyo mhlambe sijule indzaba ye climate change sitawubuka nje nyalo gule ukuthi nyalo sisesikhatsini sasehlobo kodwa na ungabuka la ngaphandle ekukhombisa timpawu tithi kusebusika mhlambe kulunga yithinta uthini mhlambe lendzaba yabo climate change ngoba uyithinsile nayo umhlonishwa ndinankulu
zodwa before the prime minister thatha podium kuqale president I think wase India Narendra Modi kanzi phambili kwaloko eAfrica bekhuluma president wase Kenya William Ruto the first African climate change summit ibanjelwe khona evile laseKenya ndinankulu uchaza silivela kangwane nalamanye amavela amaningi eAfrica ngemavela wala angafaki lokunganani kulokulimata lidwadwasto bese kusibangela lenkinga ye climate change kepha ke mave lokhanza ukuthi nasekwenteka letimo siyatsinzeka kakhulu khuluma ke indzaba lebhlungu ukuthi emavela athuthukile akachubeke phela ngekufaka imali ukuthi kubanjiswe emavasi eAfrica khona mhlambe kulwa nale mithelela yalokuguquguquka kwesimo selitulu lawubekisa nje live ndakangwane emaswati amaningi akudzinga kudla elisuthu about 700,000 of them badzinga kudla tinto leti lizodwa lekudzinga ukuthi emavela athuthukile baphuma nabaphuma nje kulomhlangano lo bayahamba baya ku COP29 nangaphosisi COP28 lokutabe kutewa tonanza batiguquguquka kwesimo selitulu the last climate change summit base Dubai last year ngilapho ke lacabanga ukuthi probably ndinankulu was just echoing eMarvi alabanye bo president base Africa labazama ukugcizelela ukuthi iAfrica iyatsinga kubanjiswe endzabeni teguquka kwesimo selitulu sikhuluma nenzaba yema SDGs njena 6% of the 17 targets iAfrica seyikhonile kwamitha nawubuka umhlaba wonke ukhona kumitha only 16%
nawubuka ukuthi nang 2030 mhlawumbe singabukela khashana ngalisowuthutana
kuthiwa ke iAfrica ngeminyaka idzinga 1.3 trillion US dollars kuze usikhone mhlambe ukuthi iwa achieve lama SDGs nesinawuthi wabuka onke anake nje kuthenini bantu baseAfrica baphume ephuyeni bathola imfundo bathola impilo lengcono enemavela sithuthukile ngole kubheka ukuthi ke asifake isandla ekuthenini iAfrica bakhona ukuthi bayibambisa ngetimali dekulwa neguquguquka kwesimo selitulu
ya tinyendana kule mhlambe letindzaba letitsinve umhlonishwa ndvunankulu siphinza futhi sabona nendvuna itekwatisa imphunga Savannah Maziya naye naketfula inkulumo yakhe khona emhlanganweni waka UN utsinze tingoni letibalekile watsinza ukuthi live laseswatini belibhekene netinsaye yade kwebuka kwetintsambo telitfusi washo ukuthi silive mhlambe kukhona lesesibonile ukuthi silive kuze sikhona ukuchubeka sikhona ukuxhumana kahle esilive kufuna ukuthi sale sisebenzisa letinye indlela kuze ukuthi sikhone mhlambe ukuchubeka noma ke sithuthuke engabe ungayithinta uyithini ke leyo ndzawo leyo gule ikakhulu tindzaba dabo cyber
zodwa nawubuka iAfrica nje as a continent
I mean fiber
1.2 billion people only 25% of Africans akhona ukuthi asebenzise namagajes lala embi kwakho nawubuka globally about 67% bakhona kufinyelela kulawo nawubuka i-sub-Saharan Africa it is home to 400 million people na comparison nemhlaba wonke labangakhona mhlambe ukuthi bafinyelele ukuthi bangasebenzisa indlela tekuxhumana umhlaba uyathuthuka sikhuluma ngabo fourth industrial revolution yalo sikhuluma ngabo AI indzaba leto ke ne level akangwane leliqinisekisako zodwa ukuthi senda njani ku improve indzaba ukuthi wonke umuntu akafinyelele kusebenzisa tekuxhumana indzaba leto le baka ITU lebadisebendayo lekhanza semavela athuthukile ayatsinga kusivele ayibambise eAfrica kunenzaba lenkulu zodwa ye debt restructuring kuthiwa akureform the financial architecture emavela aseAfrica lamaningi kunenzaba ukuthi asset connecting letikhulu connect emavase angeshare connect bo World Bank nabo African Development Bank nalamanye nje naletinye inhlangano tetimali lokhanze ukuthi bathi ke ayilungise le ndlela lekufuna abhadale ngalo tikoneti so that atokhona ukuthi afake imali etinhlelweni tentuthuko letifaka tinhlelo tekuthuthukisa tekuxhumana science and innovation njengoba nala kangwane nje sisemkhankasweni ukuthi induna yetekwatisa ithi i-broadband ayisabalaliswe ngisho nasetinkhundleni nangisemayiwane nje mina angikhone kuya enkhundleni ngikhone ukuthi nangifika khona nafika ngiconnect ku-internet ngikhone ukuthi mhlambe ngenda noma ngabe ngistudent ngenda leyo research yami noma ngenda ini
kule mhlambe nginobela nje kancane kunayi yase Taiwan sitawukhumbula kule ukuthi silive nje la seSwatini nasikhuluma ukuthi iTaiwan ilula kusida emave cishe lamanyenti kungasilo live la seSwatini kuphela nasingabuka nje ukuthi akusilo hlangosi lwetempilo kuphela but ke sekuthi iTaiwan ibonakala kakhulu kulolu hlangosi lwetempilo mhlambe naselihlangothini lwetekulima nasibuka mhlambe inzima ledlalwa iTaiwan na ungabuka kule ukuthi mhlambe nayi ngalitfola lithuba isithole esihlalo iTaiwan kungena ka-UN ucabanga ukuthi ngabe ingaba nemthelelo omuhle kanganani mhlambe kuthuthukisa ikakhulu loluhlangothi
ingaba nemthelelo omkhulu kakhulu sodwa kune TAVI kune World Vegetable Center and onke lawo ma initiative ase Taiwan bakhuluma ukuthi asidleni kahle sidle yakhumbula ukuthi kunembuya kunelugusha kunenkaka dintfo lethi na usakhula wena bekusiwa suwa kudo dlani bonala sibanibanyana ngiyabekisa but namuhla umhlaba so realizeile ukuthi kuze ukuthi siphile kahle asidleni leti bitfo temtsabo iTaiwan ke lihlelo lelo leligijimisa kakhulu la even laseSwatini nje lapha eMalkens I think kunendzawo la kugcinwa khona leti inhlanyelo taleti bitfo leti even in Tanzania kunalenye center khona so uyakubona leyo ukuthi nayo le Taiwan ingavumeleka ukuthi participate kuleti inhlelo takamhlaba ekuthenini inangabe sikhuluma ndzaba zodwa tetifo leti ngathathelwana inayo solution iTaiwan ukuthi singadivikela njani tifo letingathathelwana ingakhona ukuthi ichushise emavela amaningi lamhlabeni ukuthi yini lesingakwenda kulwa naleto tifo so I'm basically saying if nangabe UN angayi-accept iTaiwan ingasifaka sandla kuthuthukisa umhlaba
sibonga kakhulu kule kanti ke maswati lamahle besinetfulela yona inkulumo yemhlonishwa Ndvunankhulu bese siyibukisisa njena gule sesithinza mhlambe tinhlangothi letintsatfu letibalekile letitsinve nguye umhlonishwa Ndvunankhulu sesinivalelisa ke maswati lamahle stanishiya nato tinkhulumo mhlambe letetfule baholi belivekati leAfrica njengoba nalo babelelithuba lekuthi batetfule mhlambe inkulumo yabo kulo mhlangano lochubekako eveni leMelika.
At the outset, allow me to express our profound gratitude to the co-facilitators, Germany and our own Namibia, for masterfully steering the work that led to the adoption of a bold and ambitious Pact of the Future. While recognizing the many challenges and the constraints that our organization faces, we indeed agree that we are at a moment of hope and opportunity. We're all by now acutely aware of the risks that erosion of multilateralism entails and the cost of inaction. We are grateful for the Secretary General's contribution and the elaboration of the landmark report, Our Common Agenda, as well as the various thematic policy briefs in response to the request by world leaders. The ideas and insights contained in this report offered a useful basis for discussions among member states. We can't thank him enough for sharing his vision for a better, more integrated and more impactful and more networked multilateralism. Mr. President, it is imperative, urgent and crucial that we achieve consensus on a set of measures which can advance global governance that is fit for the future. Djibouti and indeed African countries shared with UN member states our vision for our continent renaissance and roadmap for realizing it. We have worked off that same map while engaging in negotiations on the Summit of the Future with member states. The ambition we have is that of a United Nations that plays a leading and strengthened role. We envision the reform of global governance to be bold and transformative. The international financial architecture must address existing inequities and be better aligned with today's world. Le fardeau de la dette des pays africains.
The burden of debt of African countries is increasing unsustainably so. It is exacerbated by unfair trade regimes as well as political strings attached. This has significantly circumscribed the political and budgetary room for maneuver of African states. The response has been inadequate given the scale of the problem and the urgency of the problem. According to the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, a global safety net has not been created for developing states. We need adequate funding in order to be able to achieve the SDGs, to fairly protect states against systemic shocks, and to make financial systems more stable. President, in order to restore trust, we have to rethink and redefine global governance that can serve as a framework for the establishment of a fairer, more equitable and effective multilateral system. Africa remains severely underrepresented in various international financial institutions. The highest number of programs at the IMF are African. However, only 6.5% of the vote share is African.
Created inequality between nations. We must collectively recommit to the Charter of the United Nations, in particular its purposes and principles, and reaffirm the primacy of conflict prevention and peaceful settlement of disputes. We must reject power politics and promote adherence to the Charter, specifically respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, unity and political independence of UN member states in our efforts to maintain international peace and security. The concerns that have motivated the Charter remain salient today, over 7 decades later. The eruption of new crises in many places in the world, the challenges the world faces in the global arms control and non-proliferation, emerging threats, including the use of nuclear weapons, is today a reality. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the reform of the UN Security Council must be accelerated. As part of the new order, we are aiming to make that body more representative and rectify the injustice done to Africa and other regional groups. I thank you for your attention.
And the Global Digital Compact, the opportunity for us to galvanize international commitments and adopt a solid and clear roadmap that will help us work together effectively to accelerate SDGs, tackle critical challenges, while preparing for a more resilient future for generations to come. Allow me here to commend the efforts of the co-facilitators for leading the process that got us here today and in bringing the pact successfully to a conclusion. The clock is ticking with only 6 more years on the 2030 agenda and trillions of dollars worth of financing and investment still needed. Multiple crises have had a substantial impact on developing countries' socioeconomic performance and on their ability to meet SDGs. The scarring effects of the pandemic, protracted crises, geopolitical tensions, and the growing climate chaos are hitting the global development agenda really hard. And whilst performance on the SDGs varies by country and region, just like the 17 SDGs themselves, performance across the globe is also integrated, and delayed action within a single country affects the global outcomes. Global development must therefore be balanced for it to become more effective and impactful. In this respect, allow me to reiterate a few points. The importance of taking concrete and tangible steps for countries and people to regain trust in the multilateral system and international cooperation. We have now an opportunity to achieve a more efficient and inclusive multilateral system that reflects the realities of today and delivers for the future. Enhancing financing for development to deliver scale and impact. Concessional, innovative, adequate, and predictable financing modalities are still urgently needed to fuel the development engines and create growth momentums. The international financing architecture must be a tool to remedy disproportionate burdens, not exacerbate their disparity, reforming the multilateral financial system to become more responsive and equitable. is still needed to enhance the voice of developing countries in global governance, build resilience, respond to economic and climate shocks, and invest in sustainable development while producing timely results. Only by overcoming disparities can we not only harness the benefits of digital technologies and AI, but also manage risk in a way that leaves no one behind. Today's adoption of the Global Digital Compact represents a new milestone of the global digital ecosystem and has the potential to create a more inclusive and effective governance system within this sphere. Youth deserve a better future, a future of justice, peace, and opportunities. With the adoption of the Declaration on Future Generations, efforts should continue to be geared towards creating necessary platforms to expand and strengthen youth participation in the decision-making processes, both at country and global levels, to better utilize them in shaping the future that they aspire to. As we collectively work to catch up on the lost time and accelerate progress, we cannot forget the most vulnerable, especially in conflict-ridden countries and regions. The humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, as a result of Israel's barbaric war on the Palestinian people, has become unimaginable. The killing of more than 41,000 civilians, the vast majority of whom are women and children, the mass destruction and forced displacement is a testament to the brutality of this war that is creating a lost generation deprived of peace, hope, and opportunities. A just and lasting peace is the only path to ending this conflict, once and for all. A peace that will ensure a viable and independent Palestinian state based on the 1967 lines, with East Jerusalem as its capital. It is therefore important to renew the commitments to the UN Charter to ensure no double standards in adhering to international law as well as to international humanitarian law. We must strive to revitalize and strengthen the work of the General Assembly and focus on reforming the Security Council in a way that reflects the realities of today's work and its role in promoting international peace and security in a way that ensure effectiveness and the ability of these bodies to fulfill their mandate. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the summit is our chance to get back on track. To deliver on it, we need to stay united. Jordan looks forward to being part of these collective efforts to achieve the desired goals. Thank you.
Madam President, Excellencies, and all protocols observed, I commend the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for his visionary leadership in initiating the Summit of the Future. I also commend the Presidents of the General Assembly, the Republic of Namibia, and the Federal Republic of Germany for providing leadership in the drafting of the Pact of the Future. The theme of the summit is both relevant and timely. The Summit of the Future is an opportunity for us to discuss the old, the new, and emerging challenges facing the world, and to renew our commitment to multilateralism. As we navigate these challenging times, effective global cooperation is imperative if we are to attain sustainable peace and inclusive socio-economic development. Madam President, the 2030 Agenda, the Paris Agreement, including the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, clearly focus on the what in terms of the goal setting, our commitments. Now it is time for us to focus on the how. We can all effectively work together to meet those commitments and tackle the most pressing issues while preparing for a more resilient future that leaves no one and no place behind. Rallying behind the reform of the global governance systems, including global financial institutions and the United Nations Security Council, is a fundamental starting point. It is reformed institutions that are fit for contemporary challenging times that that will assist as developing countries to meet our common goals. It is equally imperative that developed countries provide a comprehensive package of support for developing countries to enable them to transition to greater economies. This must include financial resources, technology transfer, capacity building initiatives. Excellencies, given the current geopolitical contestations and increasing conflicts, it is imperative that the role and capacity of the United Nations in preventive diplomacy and conflict resolution be strengthened. The need to include women and youths in the peace and security agenda cannot be overemphasized. Zimbabwe therefore supports the new agenda for peace as proposed by the United Nations Secretary General and stands ready to play its part in this regard. Madam President, the need for political will is paramount if the implementation of the outcomes of this summit are to be actualized. It will be critically important to focus on vulnerable countries, least developed countries, landlocked developing countries like Zimbabwe, and small island developing states, in line with the cardinal principle of leaving no one and no country behind. Success should be measured in terms of the extent to which any interventions reach those in hard-to-reach areas and who are furthest behind. Madam President, Zimbabwe is relatively youthful as a nation, with more than 65% of our population below the age of 35. This presents opportunities for economic growth through harnessing the innovations and innovativeness and zeal of our youths. Our policies and programs have been designed and redesigned and strengthened to ensure that young people are key drivers of our social and economic transformation agenda. This includes the establishment of innovation centers at all institutions of higher education, underpinned by a number of new heritage